Three spine-chilling true horror stories from the haunting last days of school, secrets revealed, in the quaint town of Cedar Ridge, where the faded colors of sunset drape gently over the old schoolhouse. Three ominous tales swirl around the halls of Eliza's classroom, whispers weaving fear into the hearts of her students. The last days of school draw near, but joy is tethered to dread as the ghost of a missing teacher haunts the very walls that cradle their laughter. Every flicker of light that breaks the stillness carries a sinister weight, sending chills racing down spines. The children huddled close, tales of the haunted schoolhouse clutching their young minds like cold fingers. "My brother swears he heard footsteps up there," one girl declared, her voice barely a whisper. "Nah. It's the ghost of the teacher, right? She never left." The air crackled with a mix of intrigue and terror. Eliza shook her head, trying to dismiss their fears, but inside, anxiety started to gnaw at her heart, manifesting in a suffocating grip. As the days wove closer to the end celebration, a dark shadow enveloped Cedar Ridge. Eliza felt it, to a growing distance in the children's eyes, panic lacing the very air they breathed. Parents who once greeted her with smiles now hurried past, glancing backward as if chased by something unseen. Her most brilliant student, Sam, was on the verge of tears whenever the old schoolhouse was mentioned, his trembling fingers fidgeting with a fraying thread on his shirt. Then, it came a jagged scrap of paper slipped under her classroom door. "Leave Cedar Ridge while you can," it warned, scrawled in a jagged hand that made her skin crawl. Dismissing it as an overactive imagination, Eliza pushed aside her growing worry, but seconds turned into hours, and the rehearsals turned chaotic. A lockdown was demanded, the PTA raising their voices in panic. "There's danger looming, Eliza. They couldn't see, couldn't understand. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. Night fell during the final rehearsal. Eliza's resolve hardened. Gripping a flashlight, she gathered her brave-hearted students. "We can't let fear win," she said, her voice steady, but a tremor lurked beneath. They ventured into the shadowy woods, their laughter dwindled to uncertainty as darkness pressed in around them, and the old schoolhouse loomed ahead like a terrible secret. The door creaked open, the sound echoing like a death knell in the stillness. Inside, dust swirled, catching the silver beams of their flashlights, an unsettling silence pierced only by their racing hearts. The teaching board stood in haunting testimony, past names scratched into the cracked surface, remnants of lives consumed by the darkness that clung to the air like a fog. Desperate whispers led them deeper, revealing a dreadful connection to a trusted town authority, a betrayal that writhed in Eliza's stomach like molten lead. Just when they thought they could break free from its grasp, a chill swooped in, freezing their blood. Whispers grew louder, morphing into a cacophony of desperation, the lost souls of Cedar Ridge wailing for release. The laughter that once surrounded her class melted into a heavy silence, and Eliza knew the true horror was just beginning. Would she manage to shield her students from a town that had turned monstrous, or would they become just another name on that sinister board? The shadows deepened around them, and the chilling reality was that time was running out. The air grew thick with a suffocating tension as Eliza and her students ventured deeper into the haunted halls of the schoolhouse. Shadows twisted and morphed around them, darting just at the edge of their vision. Sam pressed close to Eliza, his hands trembling, a silent plea for reassurance. No words could bridge the chasm of fear that had settled in their hearts. They moved, small beams of light cutting through the oppressive darkness, but the malevolence felt alive, writhing, as if it were watching. "Stay close," Eliza whispered, her voice barely carrying over the unsettling creaks of the old building. Her heart drummed a frantic rhythm against her ribs, each beat echoing the looming dread settled in the pit of her stomach. It felt as if the very walls of the classroom were holding their breath, waiting for something dark to emerge. A sudden crash resonated from upstairs, shattering the eerie stillness. The children jumped, eyes wide, breaths frozen in their chests. Eliza's instincts kicked in, propelling her forward. "We need to see what that was." She pointed her flashlight toward the staircase, the beam quivering as they climbed. With each step, the air thickened, electricity crackling against their skin as if something unseen loomed closer. At the top, the hallway stretched before them like a gaping maw. Paint peeled from the walls, and the floorboards groaned beneath their feet, whispering of long-buried secrets. Eliza steeled her nerves, pushing aside her dread. "Let's check the art room. That's where the noise came from." They reached the door, a rusted handle that turned with a reluctant groan. The adults in town often joked about the art room being cursed, but Eliza brushed off the words until now. The air felt heavier here, as though it held regrets and sorrow. Inside, canvases hung crooked, the paints cracked, like the spirits trapped in this room. It was dim, filled with thick shadows that swayed gently, as if breathing. Yet, it was not the state of disrepair that unnerved them, it was what lay beneath the layers. Sam, barely able to keep his breath steady, peeked around Eliza. "Look!" His voice trembled, pointing to a smudge on the floor. A shadow shifted, then darted under the table. In that instant, they all felt it, a cold wave of despair washing over them, an overwhelming sadness that seeped into their bones. Before Eliza could react, a familiar figure flickered into view, a pale girl from their class who had gone missing weeks ago. Her eyes, hollow, stared with a vacant longing. "Help me," she mouthed, her voice a chilling echo. The students gasped, fear seizing them like icy hands clenching their throats. "What's happening?" Eliza's voice was barely a whisper, her heart thundering loudly in her ears. The apparition raised a finger, pointing towards the wall, where faint scratches marred the paint. Names each etched just like the ones on the board below, but these were newer, more desperate. "Run!" a boy screamed, snapping everyone from their daze. They turned toward the door, but it slammed shut, trapping them in a cage of silence. The wailing began, ghostly figures materializing around them, filling the room with their grief. Eliza's mind raced. She had to protect the children, but how? The aura of betrayal hung thick. The town's dark secrets weren't just history, they were beginning to swallow them whole. With a fierce glare, she grasped the flashlight, narrowing her focus on the wall. "We need to break these bonds," she shouted. Desperation gripped her heart. They had to escape the cycle of fear, the torment of those lost. Her words ignited a flicker of courage in her students. As they gathered to kick at the door, a startling crack distorted the air. It reverberated like thunder, something was about to break through. In that frail moment of daring, Eliza felt the weight of the town's dark past press against her chest. No matter what awaited them beyond, they had to push through. There was no turning back. What awaited them outside those walls? Would they defeat the horror that had plagued Cedar Ridge, or would they become trapped within the tragic legacy of a lost teacher? Darkness swelled behind them, and Eliza's hope flickered like a dying flame. With a deafening crack, the door splintered under the weight of panic. The children charged forward, shoulders colliding with Eliza as they shoved their way to freedom. But the darkness seemed to pulse, thickening around them, clutching at their ankles like a desperate hand. Eliza felt hot breaths of fear mingle with her own. Each child's terrified face was a reflection of her own horror. They burst into the hallway, a chaotic wave of wavering flashlight beams bouncing off the peeling walls. That suffocating dread clung relentlessly. "Where do we go?" Christina gasped, her voice cracking. Eliza felt the room's weight still pressing down on them like a lead blanket. "Down! We need to get out!" Eliza shouted, her voice trembling with urgency. She glanced back toward the art room. Shadows writhed there, dark figures shifting within the narrowed beams of light. The classroom door was no longer a portal but a wall of sorrow, silencing their escape. They sprinted down the corridor, each footstep echoing like a drummer's march in a funeral procession. The air felt colder, an unnatural chill biting through their clothes. The mural painted on the right wall, once bright and inviting, now seemed grotesque, the faces twisted in silent screams watching. Judging, then came a low growl, echoing down the corridor. It was visceral, primal, a growl that said they weren't alone, and it sent shivers crawling down Eliza's spine. She turned. Sam was almost lagging behind, eyes wide in frozen terror. She reached for him, her hand grasping his wrist as if to tether him against the shadows. "Keep moving," Eliza urged, dragging him along as the shadows lurked closer, stretching, clawing for their escape. Ahead, the staircase spiraled downwards, dark and foreboding. "The entrance is down there," she screamed, shrouded in desperation. They flew down the stairs, the old wood creaking ominously under their weight. Her heart raced faster than their feet, a countdown. "Eliza!" shouted a girl from the back. "I think I saw something, don't look back." Eliza shouted, but the warning was swallowed by a suffocating blanket of fear. At the bottom of the stairs, the front door loomed, heavy and ancient. As they approached, a figure appeared in the doorway, a tall shadow, darkened against the light from outside. It seemed to absorb the light, a void ready to consume them. No, Eliza thought. They couldn't be trapped here. With all her strength, she hurled her body against the door, but it wouldn't budge. Her shoulder screamed in protest as she slammed into it again. Voices echoed behind them, the mournful wails rising in crescendo, a cacophony of lost souls urging them to stay. "Give up," hissed a voice in the darkness, low and penetrating. "You cannot escape." Fear flooded Eliza's veins, threatening to drown her. "We're strong. We can break free." She turned back to the children, attempting to encourage them. "On three, we push together." The children nodded, adrenaline spurring them on, but doubt glimmered in their wide eyes. 1, 2, 3. The door barely budged. They stumbled backward, crashing into each other. Their breaths grew frantic, hearts pounding like war drums against the ominous whisper. A dark possessiveness writhed around them. Suddenly, the lights flickered, illuminating nightmarish faces behind them, grinning twisted smiles, former students, forever trapped in limbo. "Stay with us forever." The chant echoed, an unholy promise. Eliza's resolve hardened. "We're not your prisoners." With renewed strength, they pressed as one against the door, the crashing of bodies, the sound mingling with the haunting cries. In that moment, Eliza knew hesitation was their greatest enemy. The door creaked, mixing sorrow and desperation. They felt the presence press against their backs as they screamed for freedom. And then, the door flung open with violent force, spilling them into the night. Fresh air filled their lungs, but the chilling wind carried a chilling revelation: the school wouldn't let them go that easily. The ground beneath them trembled, the school looming behind, a monstrous beast in the dark, unwilling to release its hold. A shudder of terror rippled through the group. They hadn't escaped, they had merely entered a new fight. "Will we ever be free?" someone whispered through the ranks. Eliza turned back. Shadowy figures still lingered at the edges of the school, drawing near, ready to claim them once more. They had to find answers or risk being engulfed by the darkness forever. What do we do now?" Sam stuttered, eyes darting back at the looming structure. Together they faced the pulsating horror. The school had secrets buried deep, and it was time to uncover them or face an eternity of despair. As they delved deeper into the night, an owl's hollow hoot echoed, hinting at a lurking dread. What twisted truths awaited them? Would they uncover the horrors behind the school's history or fall victim to the very darkness that watched them? The cold night air tasted like metal on their tongues as Eliza and the children stood frozen, the weight of the gloom pressing down heavier than before. Behind them, the school loomed, every shadow an ambush waiting to strike. A low hum started deep in the earth, vibrating through the soles of their shoes, and instinctively they huddled closer. What's happening?" Christina whimpered, clutching Sam's arm as if her grip alone could hold back the darkness. I don't know, Eliza replied, her heart thumping wildly. This was an ancient fear, a primal awareness that gnawed at their instincts. Instead of answers, they found only more questions. Before she could speak again, the bolt of an unseen door rattled. The group turned in unison, eyes wide and wild. Something was moving, a shadow flitting along the wall, whispering their names in faint echoes. The temperature dropped further, a frost creeping in from the edges of reality itself. What if it comes for us? A boy murmured, his voice barely above a whisper. What if we're still trapped? A cold sweat dripped down Eliza's back. We won't let it grab us. We need to stay together. But as the tremors of fright rippled through the kids, even she felt doubt gnaw at her resolve. Every story they'd heard about the school, the legends of the lost children, now felt ominously alive. We can't just stand here. Eliza shouted again, louder this time. They had to move. Rushing away from the bricks that were filled with sorrow, they ventured toward the dense trees beyond the open field, the only other barrier between them and the horror that waited behind. Each footfall was punctured by the sound of rustling leaves and brushes of wind that sounded almost like whispers. As they reached the tree-line, a sudden stop sent them skidding to a halt. A soft glow emanated from the ground beneath the open branches, an unnatural light pulsing softly. Eliza felt drawn to it, something inside her nagging to get closer. Wait! Christina cried, spotting the faint glimmer. What if it's a trap? Eliza's heart raced. We have to know. It might be our only chance. With a deep breath, she pushed forward, the shadows pressing in from behind like a cold gasp. The light flickered in rhythm with the pounding of her heart. Thump 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 dash thump. As Eliza knelt to examine the glow, the branches tangled and reached out as if trying to pull her in. But what lay in those depths was worse than she could ever imagine. What is that? Sam exclaimed, stepping back. The others stood wide-eyed, looking on in horror. In the dim light, she could make out faces forming, the faces of countless students, trapped within the very roots of the trees, their eyes pleading, their mouths open in silent screams. Help us, their thoughts echoed, a chorus of despair. Join us, Eliza gasped, snatching her hands back as if burned. The reality of their situation sank in like lead. The memories, the calls for help, they were drawing from the very earth beneath their feet. Run! She yelled, recognizing the ensnaring trap. The children turned to flee, but behind them, the chilling whisper grew louder, becoming a monstrous roar. Shadows coalesced, forming limbs, figures ripping themselves from the darkness to grab at their ankles, hungry for the fresh escapees. Eliza sprinted with all her might, but the roots tangled around her legs, pulling her back. No! She screamed, but others were already being dragged down into the darkness, fear etching their faces taut. Don't look back. Keep running. She cried, her voice ripping through the night. Just as Eliza thought they were fully ensnared, a sudden light pierced through the shadows. It was the flicker of headlights dashing toward them. Over here! Someone shouted from the road, a figure stepping into the frantic night. Eliza's heart lifted, but in that moment of hope, she saw the figure's face pale, mouth agape in terror. Behind them, the darkness pulsated, eager to claim them all. Eliza turned just in time to see the shadows surge forward, a tide of horror rising ready to swallow them whole. Then there was silence, a thick, suffocating silence that gripped them all as they froze in disbelief. Who is that? A child whispered as the light flickered violently, illuminating a face still shrouded in mystery but unmistakably familiar. Wait, Eliza breathed, the impact of a shocking realization dawning upon her. The school's grasp had awakened something buried deep within its legend, a secret that had been waiting for someone to find. As the shadowy figures began to wail, echoing the children's fears, a single thought invaded her mind. What if escaping the school was only the beginning? The moment hung thick with dread, and the familiar face in the glow loomed larger. Eliza squinted, trying to make sense of what she saw. It was her old friend, Sarah, the girl who had vanished 5 years ago. She remembered the stories, the whispered fears of an unspeakable fate. Sarah? Eliza called, stepping forward, every instinct screaming at her to stop. Help please, Sarah's voice, distant and echoing, seeped through the darkness. She reached out, but the shadows clawed at her, pulling her back, threatening to drag her under. Don't! Eliza shouted. It's a trap. But it was too late. The moment her voice sliced through the still air, the ground shuddered, and more figures emerged from the gloom, faces twisted in anguish, just like Sarah's. They formed a ghastly team, stretching their arms towards the children in desperation. Join us! They cried, a cacophony that clawed at the edges of sanity. Fear gripped Eliza's heart when the whispers escalated, no longer murmurs but a flood of cries that seemed to reverberate through the very trees surrounding them. Help us! Save us! Stay with us! I can't! Pleaded Christina, collapsing to her knees. They're pulling me in. I feel it. The ground rattled violently beneath them, with roots creeping menacingly towards her legs, intertwining around her as if to claim another victim. Get up! Eliza screamed, rushing back to her friend. She grabbed Christina's arm, yanking her back just as the darkness nipped at her heels. But it wasn't the shadows they had to worry about. No, it was something far more insidious, lurking beneath the surface. A chill ran down Eliza's spine when she felt something brush against her side, a bony finger rising up from the earth. We have to run now. Eliza shouted. We can make it. The other children, caught in fear's grip, hesitated, eyes darting from the hungry shadows to Eliza and back. But the air pulsed with despair, and in that moment of hesitation, the shadows seized the chance. They lunged and grabbed at the nearest child, a shriek piercing the night. Sam! Shouted another kid as the darkness pulled him down, his cries mixing with the haunting wails of those lost. No! Eliza turned, but as she did, an icy grip clamped around her ankle and yanked hard. A root twisted around her leg like a serpent, trying to rip her down into the earth. Adrenaline surged, and she kicked furiously, willing herself to escape this living nightmare. Fight it! She urged, though the words felt fragile against the swarm of death closing in. The headlights flickered again, illuminating the chaos, a beacon cutting through the dread. The figure in the light had moved closer. Eliza squinted, trying to make out the shape. It was a man, face pale, eyes wide with fear. This way! He yelled, but as he reached for them, the shadows surged violently, snapping at his feet. No! Eliza screamed, as she pulled Christina up, summoning every ounce of strength. Follow me. Now! Driven by desperation, they stumbled away from Sarah's ghostly visage and the crying figures, racing toward the light, leaving Sam behind. An anguished wail echoed through the trees. Would they be next? Eliza's insides twisted as despair welled within her. They had already lost one. Would she let them risk losing any more? Just as they reached the edge of illumination, the thundering shadow sent a shockwave through the ground, knocking them off balance. Eliza crashed to the dirt, her breath stolen by fear. The figure in the light turned, eyes full of terror. They're coming! You have to! His words vanished into a scream as shadowy hands erupted, pulling him into the void. All hope flickered as the shadows swarmed, hungry for flesh, despair flaring in the air. Eliza's heart raced, and adrenaline coursed through her veins. The light dimmed, and suddenly, everything seemed impossible. Amidst the chaos, the roots writhed upward, the ground cracking, a gaping maw threatening to swallow them whole. We can't let it take us to! Eliza gasped, struggling to stand as panic turned to determination. We have to keep moving. But a voice, softer than a whisper, curled around her thoughts again. Join us! With renewed panic, Eliza stole a glance back at the darkness and her friend's face, knowing what might come next. The question weighed heavily: could she save the others before it was too late? As shadows swarmed closer, something deep within Eliza ignited. Facing the darkest part of the school's legend, she realized one thing with chilling clarity: what if the truth they were seeking could be the very end of them all? Eliza's heart pounded in her chest as the shadows surged forward, a dark tide eager to drag her under. The whispers grew louder, almost deafening a chorus of despair that gnawed at her mind. She felt trapped, surrounded by faces twisted in agony, their haunted eyes staring straight into her soul. "Christina! We need to move!" Eliza yelled, her voice breaking through the cacophony. The shadows were close, too close. Christina, pale and trembling, seemed to snap awake at last. She pushed herself up, eyes wild with fear. "What about the others?" she gasped, glancing back at the darkness, where the cries of their friends echoed like a funeral dirge. "We can't save them, it'll take us too," Eliza shouted, tugging Christina forward. They stumbled together, feet slipping on loose soil, hearts racing with terror. The remaining kids flanked them, some still frozen in fear as the darkness lunged and snapped around them, eager shadows trying to snare another victim. Eliza could feel the oppressive weight of despair hanging in the air. Its cold fingers gripped her tightly as they sprinted. She wouldn't look back. To turn around was to invite the darkness in, to give it space to claim her. The forest twisted around them, branches clawing and pulling at their clothes, threatening to tear them apart like the lost ones. It felt alive, every rustling leaf a reminder of the horror that lurked just beyond sight. Eliza risked a glance, and her breath caught. Sarah's face was there again, clearer than ever, desperation etched deep into her features. "Eliza," the voice was breathy, pulling at her heart. "Don't leave me, stop!" she shouted, rage rising against the despair. "You're not real. You can't be." But the shadows surged then, as if responding to her rebellion, curling around her like smoke, drawing nearer. Christina clutched Eliza's arm, pulling her forward with renewed strength. "We must keep going," she cried. "We can't give in." Eliza nodded, knowing deep down that this struggle was about more than just survival. This was a battle of wills against the darkness. With her heart racing, she pushed deeper into the jagged trees, the distant flicker of hope tugging at her. "Over there." Christina pointed ahead. A narrow sliver of moonlight broke through the thick canopy, illuminating a small, worn path splitting through the trees. "We can make it." Eliza squinted into the night, her breath hitching as they darted toward the path. Night creatures howled, the shadows chasing them. Just as they reached the beginning of that sliver of light, the ground beneath them buckled, roots wrapping around their legs like live snakes. Screams erupted around them, a mix of pure terror as more of their friends were snagged. "No! Come on!" Eliza yelled, yanking Christina away from the encroaching roots. Then it happened. A dark shape lurched too close, all teeth and eyes, something that shouldn't exist. It lunged towards Eliza, and in that fleeting moment, their eyes met. A void of horror, infinite despair stared back at her, promising to devour her whole. "Run!" Eliza screamed, her body shouting in protest against the paralyzing fear. They pushed forward, but every step felt like wading through a heavy fog, the past drawing them back, whispering their names. Suddenly, a weight lifted as they burst out of the trees and onto a clearing bathed in moonlight. The eerie silence fell heavy around them, the darkness lingering just outside the edge. Eliza turned to the others, desperate to pull them from the horror of the shadows. "Everyone! Stick together!" she shouted, determined to lead them to safety. But as she counted heads, dread settled in. "Where's Ethan?" Christina asked, fear coursing through her voice. Eliza's blood ran cold. "No. Not him too." A quick glance over her shoulder revealed the dark figures loitering just beyond the tree-line, their mouths moving in unison, echoing the haunting refrain. "Join us." Eliza's mind spun with despair. With the world narrowing around them, she realized her next choice would seal their fate. Could they really escape? Or was it already too late for all of them? As the shadows seemed to creep closer and closer, the moon dimmed. With one last gasp of courage, Eliza stepped forward, ready to face what lay ahead. Stay behind me, and trust me, but would trust be enough? Would kinship conquer the encroaching darkness, or would they all be swallowed whole? The ground shivered again, and she realized they were not out of danger yet. What horrors awaited them just beyond their reach? Would it be the light they needed, or something far worse? A chill crawled down Eliza's spine as she gripped Christina's arm tighter. The shadows, now closer than ever, seemed to breathe, their dark tendrils snaking through the air, whispering promises of doom. She could almost hear Ethan's voice in the wind, calling for help, pleading to be saved from the grasp of the void that hungered for the lost. The idea of leaving him behind twisted her stomach, but there was no time for hesitation. The clearing felt too open, a stage set for something grotesque. We need to move, Eliza urged, her heart racing as her mind battled against the suffocating despair. Each thud of her pulse rang like a drum in her ears, pushing her forward even as doubt gnawed at her resolve. The others huddled close, breaths coming in quick bursts. Their faces were ghostly pale, rendered haunting by the dim light that seemed all too fragile. Eliza turned to scan the edges of the clearing, praying for a sign of safety or a way out, but shadows danced at the corners, mocking them with flickering movements. "Do you hear that?" Christina whispered, her voice shaking. A low, guttural sound slithered through the air, sending shivers coursing through Eliza's body. The noise was like chains rattling, metallic and heavy, the unmistakable clanking of something sinister approaching. Eliza's thoughts raced. Were they too late? Had they stumbled into a trap set by the very darkness that sought to claim them? "Stay close," Eliza commanded, but her heart sank when she glanced around. Faces filled with terror surrounded her, eyes wide as they served as mirrors reflecting her own fear back at her. The whispers grew louder, morphing into a cacophony of screams, cries for help echoing from the depths of the shadows. "What do we do?" someone asked, their voice breaking. Eliza felt the weight of their stares, expectation, despair, and dread. She had to think fast. They were all counting on her. "Just move," she shouted, lurching forward. The moonlight flickered, dimming as if the very essence of hope was fleeing. The shadows twisted and flexed, merging into a colossal figure at the edge of the clearing, a monstrous blend of nightmares. The creature loomed, a grotesque visage emerging with hollow, hungry eyes. Eliza's breath hitched as it took a step closer, the ground trembling beneath its weight. Panic surged through her, every instinct screamed for her to run. But before she could make a decision, the beast let out a blood-curdling roar that shattered the night, a sound that promised death. "Run!" Eliza yelled, but it was too late. As they turned, the ground seemed to split open, jagged cracks racing across the earth, swallowing the moonlight. Roots and vines erupted like serpents from the soil, reaching for the group, pulling some down with horrifying speed. "No! No!" Christina screamed, clawing at the air, trying to fight off the encroaching tendrils. Eliza felt a surge of adrenaline kick in her legs, moved on instinct, propelling her forward even as she felt the roots tugging her back, damp earth soaking her shoes. The shadows swirled, coiling tighter as they scattered into the dense underbrush, their anguished cries haunting her with every step. But she couldn't lose sight of Christina, couldn't let the darkness take her too. "Christina! This way!" Eliza shouted, lunging towards a path that opened up at the edge of the clearing. It was dark, treacherous, but it led away from the cacophony of despair. They raced down the path, hearts pounding, lungs burning. A burst of strength fueled by sheer determination propelled them forward. Eliza felt another pull, a darkness trying to claw her back. Desperation rippled through her. They had to make it, but just as they approached a crest, Eliza's foot slipped on the muddy ground. She stumbled, arms flailing, but caught herself only for a split second to catch a glimpse of the mass of shadows converging behind them, the air thick with despair. "Keep going." Christina's voice pierced the night, urging her to move. And then, as if mocking their escape, the ground lurched again, and a bone-chilling laugh echoed around them. "What is it?" Eliza whispered, fear tightening her throat in the fleeting moonlight. Before the shadows engulfed her completely, a flash of incomprehensible terror swelled within her. The thing from the dark was larger than she had imagined, too powerful, too hungry. They weren't just pursuing her, they were orchestrating something far darker. She looked at Christina, terror etched on her face, and realized they were not merely running from the shadows, they were running towards something even more sinister lurking just ahead. What awaited them at the end of this shadowy path? Would it bring salvation or plunge them deeper into despair? The air filled with uncertainty, and all Eliza could do was hope it would not claim them too. The path became narrower as they pressed on, the dense underbrush clawing at their clothes. The sounds of chaos grew distant but never faded, like a lingering memory of fear. Eliza led the charge, heart hammering, drawing on every ounce of willpower to keep the darkness at bay. Sweat dripped down her back, a cold reminder of their perilous situation. "Stay together," she yelled, glancing over her shoulder. A few straggled behind, faces contorted with dread. The ground felt alive beneath her feet, pulsing as if it too was a part of the shadows that chased them. Eliza clenched her jaw. They couldn't slow down, not now. "What if we just keep running?" Christina gasped, her breath hitching. "What if this doesn't end?" Those words settled like a stone in Eliza's stomach. The idea gnawed at her, but she couldn't show fear. Instead, she squared her shoulders, fighting off the crawl of despair. "It has to lead somewhere. Just hold on." The path twisted and turned, steep hills rising beside them like sentinels of dread. Each step echoed with uncertainty. Beyond the brambles, a chill wind swept through the trees, carrying with it whispers that snaked around Eliza's mind, weaving tendrils of doubt. Ethan. The name escaped her lips before she could stop it. The memory of him was a fragile flame, a beacon lost in an unforgiving sea of shadows. Where was he? Her heart clenched tighter, burdened by the weight of his absence. "What if we find him?" Christina ventured, her voice barely above a whisper. Eliza could see the flicker of hope, wild but desperate, clinging to her friend. But that glimmer felt more like a lie, a trick the darkness played to keep them teetering on the edge of despair. The sound of branches cracking made them freeze. It was close. Too close. Straining her ears, Eliza listened as the unmistakable sound of something monstrous shifting through the underbrush rolled toward them like thunder. The rumble shook the very ground beneath their feet. "Run!" But the command died in her throat as a massive shadow broke through the trees, blocking their exit. It towered over them, a beast of sinew and shadow, its eyes twin pits of emptiness that drank in the light. "Back! Back!" Someone screamed, but the cry was swallowed by the growl of the creature. Its breath smelled like decay, like the last hue of twilight fading from the world. Eliza felt the bile rise in her throat as she took a shaky step back. "No!" Christina shouted, pushing forward, ready to confront the nightmare. "We can't just stand here." "Christina, don't." Eliza lunged, grabbing her arm, but the beast lunged too, engines of darkness roaring to life. The creature hesitated, as if torn between its hunger and the strange fire in Christina's determination. "Let me go!" Christina shouted, wrenching free, eyes wild, as she charged straight toward the horror. It was a reckless move, a beacon of defiance, but Eliza's heart sank at the sight. No one should have had to face this alone. "Get back!" Eliza burst forth, grabbing a nearby branch and brandishing it like a sword. The shadows wove around her, thick and choking. A deep growl erupted from the creature, but her determination sharpened like steel. "We won't let you take one more." Just then, the dark mass of roots shot from the ground, snaking towards them once more, fury incarnate. Eliza had to act fast. They needed to escape, there had to be another way through. Her pulse raced, body thrumming with adrenaline as she scanned the surroundings for a semblance of safety. Over there. she shouted, pointing to a rocky outcrop ahead. "We can get to higher ground." Without waiting for a response, Eliza dashed toward it, dragging Christina behind her. The creature roared, the noise rattling through her bones, but she couldn't look back. Every fiber of her being pushed forward, her feet pounding against the earth, desperate to reach that escape. Yet as they neared the rocks, Eliza froze, throat tightening as shadows began to converge around them. It was a trap, a sinister design they had unknowingly walked into. "What is this?" Christina's voice trembled. As they reached the outcrop, only to find it engulfed in dark mist. Then a sight that terrorized her to her core materialized under the ethereal haze. An eerie glow pulsed at the center of the darkness. Ethereal figures, remnants of those lost to the shadows, reached out, their eyes hollow. They seemed to be warning them or beckoning them closer. "Don't look. Keep your eyes forward," Eliza shouted, panic prickling her skin. The darkness was closing in, whatever waited at the end was now almost upon them. In that fleeting moment, as the air thickened with dread, Eliza realized they had unwittingly stumbled into the very heart of the void. What would it demand in return for their lives? Would they end up like the shadows, lost and searching? Or would they find a way out, a path to salvation, hidden even in the depths of despair? The dreadful uncertainty loomed like a shroud, leaving them one final question: was there truly a way to escape the darkness, or was their fate already sealed? The mist swirled around them, thickening with every second, wrapping them in a palpable dread. Eliza's heart raced, each beat a reminder of the danger they faced. The hollow eyes of the lost souls drew her gaze against her will. She felt their pain, their despair seeping into her skin like cold water, paralyzing her. "Christina, we have to move," she urged, but the words faltered on her tongue. The mist was alive, whispering secrets too dark to comprehend. It crawled at their ankles, trying to bind them in place, and for a moment, Eliza felt the pull of the shadows. Christina's voice broke through the fog. "Eliza. What if they know something? What if they could help us?" "No." The fierce denial burned in Eliza's throat. "They want to trap us. We can't trust them." Suddenly, a scream shattered the ominous silence, piercing the mist with a chilling clarity. It was a sound steeped in terror, the kind that carved into your soul. They both spun around, eyes wide, scanning the darkness where the scream had come from. "Was that?" Christina swallowed hard. "It doesn't matter. We have to go." Eliza gripped Christina's wrist, yanking her toward the rocky formation. Their breath was labored, the air thick with the rot of despair, each clouded inhalation a struggle against the miasma, but then they were greeted with a new horror. Shapes emerged from the mist, twisted silhouettes that resembled people but moved with an unnatural jerking motion. Their faces were shrouded in darkness, features lost to despair. Eliza's stomach twisted as one reached out, skeletal fingers grasping for them. "Run! Run!" Eliza screamed, her voice tearing through the panic. They sprinted, dodging the grasping shadows that surged toward them like a wave, hungry and relentless. With every step, dread pooled in Eliza's veins. The rocky outcrop loomed closer, but the ground beneath them bucked and twisted, roots and branches clawing at their feet, attempting to trip them, to drag them down. Each breath came heavier, desperation fueling their strides. "What if we get trapped? What if?" Christina wheezed, panic tinging her words. "Shut up. Just run," Eliza urged, adrenaline spiking. The shadows shrieked behind them, a cacophony of rage that vibrated through her bones. They reached the rocks, the ominous mist swirling aggressively around them. Eliza scrambled, pulling herself up the rough surface. Christina followed close, but as they reached the top, they were met with a new sight, an opening into a cave, dark and inviting yet foreboding. "Is this safe?" Christina hesitated, eyes darting nervously, scanning the void beyond. "Safer than being down there," Eliza pointed at the writhing shadows below. They could hear the growl of the beast still prowling beneath, its hunger palpable, uncertainty hung thick around them like the mist. "We have to decide now," Eliza urged, her voice breaking. "We can't stay here, we might become a part of whatever that was." Christina hesitated, torn between the shadows and the darkness of the cave. Then, a voice floated up from below, deep and echoing, chilling Eliza to her core. "Join us, the shadows are waiting." It was a beckoning tone, promising solace but laced with something darker. "We can't," Eliza gasped, stepping back to pull Christina inside the cave. "Just one step," the ghostly whisper called, seductive and sinister. Eliza's heart raced, caught in a whirlwind of fear and desperation. They had to choose. Beyond the cave was the yawning abyss of shadow, but inside, there lay an impenetrable dark. They could not linger, but the shadows were patient, relentless, waiting for them to falter. "Please let us go," Eliza implored, pulling Christina closer to the cave's edge. The shadows howled, rising like a tidal wave. "Now!" Eliza cried, making a desperate plunge into the cavern of darkness. The moment they stepped inside, the shadows screamed, their roar reverberating through the air. But deep within, a glimmer of light flickered, a pulsating heartbeat of hope amid the despair. With trembling hands, Eliza moved forward, and that flicker seemed to pulse in rhythm to her own racing heart. What lay ahead? Was it salvation or a deeper abyss? The shadows thrashed outside, furious and frantic. They had entered the cave, but the darkness was far from over. Could they find a way through? Eliza felt that uneasy weight once more. Had they truly escaped the darkness, or had they simply entered another realm of terror? What other horrors awaited them as they pressed further into the unknown? The darkness of the cave enveloped Eliza and Christina as they stepped away from the chaos outside. The cold air wrapped around them like a shroud. Their breaths appeared as mist in the chilly cavern, each exhale a reminder of the urgency pressing against them. The shadows roared angrily, but the cave was both a refuge and a prison, a paradox that unsettled Eliza. "Is this really safe?" Christina whispered, her voice trembling. "We have to try," Eliza replied, her heart racing with fear and determination. They pushed further into the darkness, the walls damp and rough under their fingertips. An unnerving silence replaced the chaos outside, leaving only the distant echo of their footsteps as they moved deeper into the belly of the cave. Suddenly, they stumbled upon a small chamber filled with faint light, casting eerie silhouettes on the walls. The light flickered like a dying star, but it was enough to reveal figures strewn across the ground, their forms twisted and broken. Panic surged through Eliza as she recognized the faces, the missing children from Cedar Ridge, trapped within this shadowy realm. Their mouths opened in silent screams, eyes wide with tragedy. "Help us," a voice whispered, fragile and hollow. "No!" Eliza cried, stepping back, grappling with the need to flee this new horror. "We can't stay here. We can't." Christina clutched her arm, eyes wide. "What if we can save them? What if there's a way?" Eliza felt her chest tighten. They were bound by a shared history, shackled to the same fate that had befallen those lost in the darkness. But could they truly save them? Or would they become just another whisper, trapped forever? "Listen," Eliza breathed. "We can't get dragged in. If they beckon to us, we're done for." But the pleading cries grew louder, a symphony of sorrow that tugged at her heart. It was a sinister lullaby, calling for salvation, promising release from torment. The flickering light pulsed stronger, revealing a path that branched off into further darkness, leading deeper into the unknown. "This way," Eliza urged, pushing Christina ahead as she fought the urge to turn back. They crept along the path, driven by instinct, the haunting cries fading behind them, replaced by a low hum that resonated through the very walls of the cave. With each step, Eliza felt a weight lift as they left the cries behind, a bittersweet sacrifice for freedom. But the cave quickly darkened again, and an overwhelming sense of dread returned. As they navigated further, the vibrations of the ground grew more intense, a reminder that whatever curse the school wouldn't let them go so easily, and then it struck a wave of cold, like fingers of ice wrapping around Eliza's throat. The shadows began to throb and pulse, a cacophony of despair crashing around them. "It's angry!" Eliza shouted, but it wasn't her the darkness wanted. "Let us hurry!" Christina shouted, panic etched across her face. They rushed through the passages, dodging creeping tendrils reaching for them, the darkness asserting its claim, but determination blazed in Eliza's chest. As they scanned for an exit, a faint light emerged at the far end, a pinprick of hope in the swirling chaos. "This way!" Eliza breathed, leading Christina towards the light. The shadows surged, howling louder, desperate to keep them. Eliza could feel the loss of her friends weighing heavily, their memories colliding with their own frantic need to survive. "We aren't joining you," she shouted, forcing herself to reclaim control. Breaching the mouth of the cave into the very last stretch, the walls trembled, and a low growl reverberated through the earth. The oppressive darkness behind them surged forward, snapping at their heels. The light flickered violently. It was now or never. "Ready?" Eliza cried, adrenaline coursing through her veins. Christina's nod was barely visible, but there was certainty behind her wild eyes. With one final push, they burst into the light. Fresh air filled their lungs, and the ground beneath them shifted violently, but they were free from the shadows once and for all. They emerged onto a hillside, overlooking the vast Cedar Ridge sprawled below. The schoolhouse loomed in the distance, a dark figure now exorcised of its torment. The fading echoes of lost children lingered in the breeze, but they were finally safe. The weight on Eliza's heart began to lift. Flashing lights appeared far below as the townsfolk, drawn by the commotion, approached. Eliza clutched Christina's hand, her heart swelling with hope mingled with loss. They had escaped barely, and now it was time to reclaim their lives. As they turned to look back, the schoolhouse stood silent, drenched in soft moonlight, a haunting reminder of what they survived. In that moment, Eliza realized the battle wasn't just theirs to fight anymore. They had to share the truth, reveal the secrets hidden in the shadows, and honor those still lost. Turning away, she took a deep breath. "Home," she whispered, hope glazing her eyes. The darkness had threatened to consume them, but together, they became a beacon of resilience. This was just the beginning, an awakening, and Eliza was determined to shine that light, to shout out for every lost soul and lift them from despair. The horror of Cedar Ridge had been staved off, but the shadows would always be waiting. This chapter had closed, but a new story beckoned, one where they would face the truth with courage unmatched. Now, if you've enjoyed this journey and want to ride along as more stories unfold, you need to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive tales. Smash that like button right now to feed the algorithm and help us grow. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about the ending. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans understand the importance of showing your support in ways that matter. Let us keep our community strong and ready for what comes next.